This is Nitro Game Injection.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Nitro Game Injection. I am your host, KyleJCrb. And I'm here tonight to bring you something very awesome. But first, I'm going to let you know what you just heard, because that's also very awesome. And even though I've played it on a show 100 million gazillion times, I played it again, because I don't care, because it's good. That was Prince of Darkness and Kyle Etges and Mark Kinz coming together for Swinglevania. That was from the MagFest 11 month Dwelling of Duels Konami versus Capcom way back in December of 2012, leading into January 2013. That was the winning track, because of course it was PUD. Covering Castlevania and Castlevania 3. But we're here because we're celebrating Castlevania. But we're not celebrating either of those games. Those games are for plebs. Those games are for lamers. Those games are for people who don't know anything about Castlevania. We're here to celebrate a very obscure Castlevania game. I'm talking about Akumato Dracula for the Sharp X68000, or X68000 if you prefer to call it by its proper name. Or if you prefer to call it by the name it was released as internationally, Castlevania Chronicles for the PlayStation. But I don't know. Do we count that version? Is that a good version? I didn't actually play it. I played I went ahead and actually played the X68000 version. Getting the emulator set up was kind of a bitch, but I got it eventually. And it's a really freaking good game. I didn't want to put it down. I eventually had to, but it's pretty tough. It's a Castlevania game, so of course it's pretty tough. But I was surprised at how it's a little easier than I expected. I don't know if that just means I'm getting better at Castlevania games or if I'm understanding them more. I don't know. I didn't have as much trouble with it as I expected, which isn't to say I didn't have any trouble with it, but you know. All right, so we're here. We're going to be playing the entirety of a brand new release from Swinglevania Projects, an album directed by Brenna Sindra Wilkes. She will be joining us in a little while, along with one of the artists from the game, or from the album, sorry, not from the game, sadly. That would be really cool. An artist from the album is also really cool, but you know. From the album will be joining us in a little while. But I will be playing a couple of tracks first to whet your appetite a bit. You can find more about the album over at swinglevaniaprojects.bandcamp.com. You can download it, you can stream it, you can find it for $5. You can also find it on Google Play, Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. I think that's all of them. It's a lot of places. It's in a lot of places. It's $5 in all of them. It's well worth your time and your money. It is a free to stream on Bandcamp and Spotify. So it's out there. It's out there. It's everywhere. And looks like Species is hitting us up with the link in the chat. Thank you for that, Species. I appreciate that. And that's really about it, I think. The X68000, very obscure Japanese-only home computer. Wasn't really released much outside of Japan. Kind of like an early 90s. It's not the MSX, but it's kind of where Konami went to after the MSX. And if you've been listening to this show for a while, you know a little bit about the MSX, because I've done an entire show dedicated to it. So, but it's a great computer. The game looks excellent, and of course it sounds amazing. There are several different sound chips and sound add-ons you could use with it as well to get some different music going, different instruments going for the music. It sounds really good with the Roland MT32. But it also sounds good with the built-in Sharp FM chip, so, I mean, come on. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the first block of music. We got a double dose of Snappleman starting us off with his version of Black Mass and a Vampire Killer. This is from Castellum Sanguis 68. or LXVIII. I'll just say 68. That's more fun. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into it and keep it here. This is Nitro Game Injection. All right. We are 3 songs deep into Castellum Sanguis 68. And I'm joined by album director Brenna Sindra Wilkes and Erich Peabody, aka Viking Guitar. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Oh, shit. Hi.
Hi. How are you guys doing today?
Oh, not too bad for midway through October. Enjoying the gloom and doom of a fantastic fall day, evening, whatever this is at this point. I don't even remember. But yeah, doing good and listening to some damn Castlevania.
Well, this is the time of year for Castlevania, so
it is.
I know. I always love playing Castlevania around this time of year. I don't know. It's just that perfect mix of both the horror elements and kind of this little bit of silliness that Halloween time has. The fun of Halloween.
The fun part of it, and we're about to get more when that Castlevania Resurrection comes out. Not Resurrection. God, I'm thinking of the. That's like the umpteenth time I've called it that because I keep on thinking of the canceled Dreamcast Castlevania. What's this new one called again? Shit! Now I'm completely off my game.
Is it an actual Castlevania game, or are you thinking?
No, it's a re-release of Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood.
It's Castlevania Rondorection.
Rondorection. There we go. I like that.
Thank you, Erich. That's perfect. Rondorection.
That's a play on words for all of you at home.
Rondorection. I like it. I'm gonna call it that. Rondorection. Anyway.
Oh God.
So of course.
The porn Castlevania.
Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised that doesn't exist yet.
Oh, I'm sure it does. Yeah. Let's be fair here.
Listeners furiously typing into Google right now.
Rondorection.
They're doing other furious things right now too.
Well, you got to take care of your Rondorection. If you have a Rondorection lasting any longer than 4 hours, please consult your nearest vampire.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, this is a pleasant start.
Yeah. This is normally how this show goes.
Oh, fantastic!
It's fine.
Rapidly running through responses and vetoing all of them. So.
It's fine. Don't worry. You can say whatever you want, Erich. It's cool. The show is not. We are not.
Kid friendly.
We are not we're not regulated by the FCC, so you can say the fuck all you want.
Oh, okay. Lovely.
That's good.
Yes. Well, so just say the fuck all you want.
Gonna maintain the old Rondorection a little longer before we go for it. So.
You can't say fuck. You have to say the fuck. Because I screwed up and said the fuck. So you have to say the fuck now.
It's like the royal fuck.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Capital F.
All right. We want to talk about this album a little bit, Brenna. Let us know what... obviously, I know the inspiration of what this was. It's the game, obviously. But tell us a little bit how the game inspired you and how you came to find out about the game, because it's a pretty obscure Castlevania game.
It is a pretty obscure Castlevania game, considering, if I remember correctly, the Sharp X68000 was only released in Japan as a Japan computer. So, yeah, most people, much like the original Rondo of Blood, did not know that Akumajo Dracula for the Sharp X68000 had no idea. No casual fans had any idea this thing existed. Only, those of us in the Castlevania niche had any idea of what it would be. And, heck, I didn't even know it existed until, really getting my feet wet during the early days of the interwebs and, having all that searching power for Castlevania forums, which I surprise met one of our album mastering technician and artist who we just listened to, the fantastic Snapple Man.
That's the Snapple Man.
The Royal Snapple.
Yes.
Andreas, he mastered this album and, obviously contributed to a fair amount of it, more so than I ever expected him to, but I am eternally grateful. But he is probably one of the reasons I got so into this soundtrack when I had never played it before. I didn't get my hands on Castlevania Chronicles, which was the re-release on the PlayStation in 2001. Until then, I had no idea what this game was. I had no idea about the soundtrack, and during many a late night conversation with Andreas, we'd talk about Castlevania soundtracks, and he was far more learned and knowledgeable than I was at the time. So basically, it would be less of a discussion and more of an argument as to why I preferred Symphony of the Night and why he was going old school with, soundtracks like Dracula's Curse and the X68000 and. Obviously, as the years went on and you got emulators and whatnot, and I could play the original and I listened to the soundtrack a lot more, I grew to really appreciate a lot of the original compositions on it. Obviously, the soundtrack is divided between well-known tracks, Vampire Killer, and as you'll be hearing shortly, other tracks like Wicked Child, Bloody Tears, and more. It had a bunch of original sound compositions that as far as I know, have never been on any other Castlevania soundtrack. So many of these tracks have not been rehashed, so nobody knew about them. And after taking over the Dance Macabre horror compilations from Erich and getting my feet wet with producing these video game, music arrangement albums, I decided I wanted to kind of fulfill a long dream of mine since, the early days of, learning that people did these projects, did these, game-wide compilations, and decided I wanted to do a Castlevania one, but not just any Castlevania one, because it's, so many of the soundtracks have been done several times, the original and several times, the original, Symphony of the Night, so on and so forth. So for my first album, I wanted to do one that I knew had never been touched in its entirety, and one that I know a lot of people had never even known existed. So the X68000 soundtrack was just like one of the ones I knew I wanted to tackle. From there I just kind of got a bunch of artists together who I knew I knew well enough and had worked with before to bring them on, and thankfully actually got the coerced them and shanghaied them into working on the album with me, and the rest is history. We have Castellum Sanguis. I don't even know how that's actually supposed to be pronounced. It's Latin, but
I'm going to say, I went Sanguis, but I could be wrong.
I mean, French is, Romance language too, so interchangeable. We'll go with whatever.
The Sanguis is the next Nintendo console.
The Nintendo Sanguis? I like it.
Yeah.
I'd buy it.
But you have to play with your pinky up the whole time.
Yes.
And as long as it's actually spelled Sangwii, then
the capital W, no space.
Of course. That has to be the name of it. Well, awesome. I definitely enjoy the album quite a bit, and so I had to reach out and be like, hey, let's do a listening party for this. And you're like, well, I already did a listening party, but okay, we can do another one.
Let's do all of the listening parties. I am all for it.
Let's just play this album for every episode of this show for the rest of the month. How's that?
Ad nauseum. Yep.
I think there's only one more episode left in this month, but hey, that's fine. I gotta have something to do for the Halloween week anyway. So.
Well, if you need a step in.
Yes. All right. Well, let's go over the tracks we just heard, the 3 tracks, and you can chip in on them as you see fit. We just heard Fennekin with Creatures of the Depth. A short but sweet track, I would say.
That is Creatures of the Depth is the boss theme that much like Poison Mind from the original Castlevania. And Fennekin was the one of two artists who I had never worked with before on anything. And having heard him on his most recent Mega Man release, really felt like he was a good fit with, the kind of idea I had for the album, and reached out to him. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this album. I like your work. I think you'd work well with this group who I already have. Would you be interested? And after some back and forth, he signed on, and I'm really, really glad he did. He got together with John Poulin there, and they made a great track. I'm really glad, and I think they've worked on other stuff since. So really, really happy that they both came on for that track.
Awesome. And before that, of course, we started off with the venerable Snappleman, doing both Black Mass and Vampire Killer. Black Mass
with something loopy also tacked on into that track. Black Mass was the intro to the game. Something loopy is the title screen, and he decided, he's like, I'm just gonna make him one track. I'm like, oh, dude, you know what? You're doing that, and you're doing Vampire Killer. This is going to be basically Snappleman does the whole damn album. He almost did at one point.
Snappleman covers the X68000.
Pretty much.
I'm not too surprised by that, knowing Snappleman myself.
Honestly, he was my first choice in terms of bringing somebody on for this album. Other than this, Viking schmuck I've got.
Well, I mean, Snappleman was sort of your inspiration and your introduction to the soundtrack and to the game.
And,
so.
Really the only other person who knew the soundtrack as much, actually far more than I do. So I knew he was just the go-to for that. And, he also offered to do the mastering of everything, and he worked with all the artists, tweaking things, and again, I couldn't have found a better person, I don't think, who really embodied the lifelong kind of, I don't want to say obsession, but I mean,
say obsession.
It's obsession. And dedication. There we go. That's a much better word. Dedication to these soundtracks and to this particular soundtrack. So I was really eternally grateful that he came on and he, did the tracks that he did, and
and all the rest of them.
Yeah, he basically just kind of stuck his dick in every track, kind of. just the tip.
Yeah, that sounds like something he would do.
Yeah, just a little. So.
All right. Well, I think we're ready to go ahead and take a break, get into some more music here. We're coming up with Mega Beardo. This track is freaking great, by the way. Thrashard in the Cave.
This is one of the original tracks that you don't hear on any other Castlevania, and Ryan, as soon as I was thinking about who might take what tracks, I'm like, Thrashard's is Ryan's. He's like the perfect person for that track, and sure enough, he took it, he ran with it, and he did as well as anybody could have asked on that, particularly me.
Oh, definitely. He's Beardo's freaking awesome. I love that guy. So.
He is one of the three best guitarists in Viking Guitar Live.
One of the three, huh?
Yes.
Excellent. When that's high praise, man. That's really high praise. All right, the bassist doesn't count. Screw that guy.
Well,
that little guy. I wouldn't worry about that little guy.
All right, let's get into Mega Beardo, Thrashard in the Cave, and we'll be back. Keep it here. This is Nitro Game Injection. That right there was Pokerus Project with Bloody Tears. A bit of a different take on it from the original soundtrack, as we were talking about off the air, Brenna.
Yeah. So, as we were discussing off the air, you have Vampire Killer and Wicked Child that were, done in very, funky ways from, their original incarnations on the, the CB1 on the NES.
And 2.
No.
Bloody Tears.
Bloody Tears is Castlevania 2. But
no, I meant Vampire Killer and Wicked Child. Those were much funkier on the X68000 versions than their original on CB1. Whereas Bloody Tears, not much different from its CV2 incarnation on the X68000. It was pretty standard vanilla stuff. And Patricio, he decided to just kind of take it in a much different direction than I thought he was going to. And the end result ended up being different than anything I could have really predicted. And I'm glad for that, because Bloody Tears has been done death and back. I want to be almost as much or more than Vampire Killer. And it's insanely hard to do in any kind of way these days that is notable. And what he did with just with the offbeats and timing and everything was very unique, and he managed to pull it off. I was really happy with the end result of him working on that.
all right, before that we had the Plasmas with Wicked Child. And as we were talking about off the air, that is definitely the best sounding Plasmas track I've heard. And don't get me wrong, I love the Plasmas, but sometimes their mastering and mixing is a little hot. They come across a little loud.
No, the final result between what Mauricio did, and there was a lot of back and forth between him and I, and then he and Andreas in terms of kind of fine tuning his track, and just kind of putting the finishing touches on things. And between what he and I discussed and kind of brainstormed, and then what he and Andreas were able to do with the final product, ended up turning out just fantastic. I was happy. I'm going to say that with every single track. I was happy. Imagine that. I'm happy.
It's good to be happy about how your albums turn out. I can relate.
Shit. Turned out like shit, and you're all shit for it.
It's true. It's all true.
Just whipped them behind the scenes. You're all horrible people.
Well, now we know. We know the truth. The truth come out.
I am the worst.
Selmont actually was saying that they hated Wicked Child from the game, and Wicked Child is my favorite track off the game because of the bass. And Selmont was saying they hated the bass.
And again, certain things, certain strokes for certain folks. I completely understand.
I can definitely see how it would rub people the wrong way, but I personally... Oh,
totally. And it's a matter of, just how it's arranged and whatnot. I liked the Wicked Child arrangement for the X68000. I hated the one for Castlevania Chronicle. Mm-hmm. It's a different, even though it's technically like they're supposed to be the same beats and everything, but it is what it is.
The instrumentation, they did some...
Yeah.
They used a different instrumentation for the Castlevania Chronicles, and so it sounds... Yeah. It definitely doesn't sound as good.
Well, when Chronicles came out, it was... I don't know, if I'm remembering correctly, it was in this weird era of video game music where they were like trying all kind of... They hadn't had the years to kind of refine how to use them, and so it was just like, oh, we have all this cool new shit, let's just fucking use all of it. And it wasn't necessarily appropriate for every situation they were applying it to.
No.
Yeah. Well, you could also, when the first time you load up Castlevania for the X68000, it also gives you the choices of different sound output devices to use that the X68000 supported. So
Exactly.
I think
it
Chronicles
was jarring to go back to that. Granted, the Castlevania Chronicles version, you can stick with the original arranged, or excuse me, you can stick with the arranged, or you can go back to the original soundtrack, which made it all better. You couldn't necessarily. I don't believe you could on Castlevania Chronicles. You could switch between the 3 different types. I think it was.
I don't
on
think
the
so.
I don't think you could switch between the 3 different sound sets from the X68000 version, but
Yeah, I played it on a PlayStation emulator. The only time I played it, and it didn't give me that option.
Yeah, I think it's the Western release. You have to use like a cheat code or something to unlock that.
yeah,
While the
Yeah.
Japanese version just gives you that option up front or something.
yeah.
It's
'cause-
weird. It's weird. It's because us lowly Americans don't know what the MT32 is.
We're just ignorant plebes.
That probably is true. It's a shame.
Sorry, someone just posted in the chat that there was a Meatloaf cover band named Pot Roast, and I'm just laughing my ass off at that.
Thanks, Susie.
Ugh.
Meatloaf cover band named Pot. That's great. Unrelated to the album, but who cares? It's
I was
funny.
about to say,
Hey, this is critical information here.
It's true. Well, you can find meat in the walls, so there you go.
Yeah,
You could just say instead of chicken, it's a pot roast.
There's our nexus.
It's a pot roast in the walls, or meatloaf in the walls. Jeez. That's pretty good. Oh man.
Hey, so what's coming up next, Kyle?
Actually, it's you, Eric. You are
Oh
next.
my god!
You are next, and you are here, so you can talk about your song. You can talk about it. You can say whatever you want.
oh,
I mean,
Jesus.
I suppose I could.
Here comes the wankery.
No, I mean, the quick version is I'd never heard this one before. I didn't play this game until earlier this year when Brenna was talking about doing the this compilation here. And when I was looking at the track list, that one stood out as just having the most latitude in terms of like weird shit I could do with it. And so I agreed to do it, and then I started learning how to play it on guitar and immediately regretted choosing that song. But I got Adam Henry, Viking Guitar Live, among other things, to do drums for it, and that kind of took it from just being kind of okay to being fucking stellar. So I don't know if he's here listening to this right now, but if any of you know Adam, he's just a beast behind a drum kit, and this song has a lot of weird stuff where it's normally in a 5 count, but then there were random sections I put in that, for 1 bar would be a 6 count or a 7 or an 8. And I sent him the scratch track, and he sent me finished drums in like 48 hours or something, and they were just perfect. And I mean, I've worked with him for years, and I'm used to him doing pretty astounding things, but this was still a new, it still raised my eyebrows. I'm like, well, fuck, okay, good job. But yeah, I normally go a bit more thrash and a bit less prog metal with stuff, but this is probably the proggiest thing I've done.
Mhm.
Sounds like clockwork, or it's supposed to, which makes sense because it's a tower of gears, you might say.
Yeah.
So,
I actually was kind of expecting more of clockwork in this one because I hadn't played the game yet, and I'm not as familiar with the X68 soundtrack as I should be before this.
yeah.
And so I was expecting it to be a little bit more clockwork. I didn't realize it was going to be a unique arrange or a unique song to the game. But
Oh, it's probably the single track on the OST that I had real hesitations about it coming out arranged I was worried about whoever took it, how they were going to arrange it, because it's such an off-the-wall track.
right.
And fortunately, Erich was like, "Oh, I'll take this one." I'm like, "Okay,
It's,
you fucking crazy man."
that's always the thing, right? It's like you're thinking, oh man, how could they possibly do this one? And then you see who takes it, and you're like, whew, that's sweat off my brow.
And that was like, okay, well, he's probably the best choice for this, so I'm gonna.
Aw.
Yeah. It's like someone who's perfect for it. You just have this
Definitely,
sense.
he didn't not fuck it up.
Yeah, you just
And
have
I
this
didn't
sense of who's perfect
mean, what?
for it, and you're like, boom, and they take
Well,
it.
this one-
yes.
This one was funny for me too because I was like racing to get this done before I packed up my studio to move across the country. Like I was mixing this, maybe 24 hours before I broke down all of my equipment.
Oh.
So like I finished the mix and I sent it to Snapple, man, and I'm like, I really hope you don't need any changes for this because it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, we've talked about it enough, I think. Let's go ahead and listen to it. This is Viking Guitar with Tower of Gears. Keep it here. This is NGI. All right, and we're back. And you just heard Darmock and Friends, aka Darmock, Katamari, and Jason Farrell with, song title's getting cut off here. Tower of Dolls, there we go.
Aluminum Samurai.
Aluminum Samurai. Why is it an Aluminum Samurai?
Because it's Steel Samurai Light.
Oh, okay. I get it. Yes. All right, Darmock and Friends. Yeah, I kind of get it. I'm sorry, I'm the worst.
God damn it.
I'm the worst. Anyway, Darmock and Friends. It's like Garfield and Friends, except it's Darmock.
Yep.
That's it. That's right.
Now, as far as I know, Darmock did the majority of the arrangement and the bass, and Katamari came in and he did some tweaks to the mix and the guitars and everything. So it was, I know for distribution I had to list them as Steel Samurai, just because distribution can be a picky bitch like that. But it really is, Darmock's, track, and with help of everybody else. And either way, I don't want to slight anybody not Darmock in that, but it really was it was an interesting track. They introing with the Phantom of the Opera bit to it, and then having the choir and everything else. It was a nice twist on things. I was really, really happy with how that turned out. Again, imagine that. Happy. Huh?
Well, good.
Yeah.
You want to be happy with your album. I don't know.
Yeah.
Together
I was flipping tables all over the place. God damn it.
Put together a crap album and then release it anyway. What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
A Snapple Man.
I was just trolling all of the listeners.
That would make that. There we go.
There isn't actually a Castlevania X68000 game. It doesn't exist. It's all
it
been a
doesn't.
joke. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you wanted to troll people, you just have to do the Konami model, and instead of an album, it's just like a piece of paper that it's the album insert. There's no actual album. It's like how when Konami says they're going to release a Castlevania game, and then it's just a pachinko game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the next album Brenna's doing is the full soundtrack to PT.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. There we go.
Halloween 2019. Full
Yes.
PT soundtrack arrangement.
Perfect.
Intervania Projects.
Snappleman says he did every song.
Well,
what he means is we were all thinking of him at every moment when we were doing our songs, which is true.
That is true. I'm always thinking of Snappleman, aren't you?
It's true.
It's
a good way to wake up.
It's like in Night Before Christmas, Dances of Snappleman. Visions of Snappleman danced in our heads.
Dances with Snappleman.
Dances with Snappleman. Visions of
That's
Snappleman
right.
danced in our heads. Or dances of Snappleman visioned in our heads.
Yeah. Some Nutcracker suite with Snap playing every role.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Hey, Andreas, guess what's going to happen?
Yes. Before that last track, we had Prime Legion, which is the band of CarboHydroM, Wildcat, Mike Montemarano, and Dr. Erich Beckmann. And they were...
the Honorable Dr. Beckmann.
Yes, indeed. And their song is called Moonfight, which is a funny name for this.
It's about Infinity War.
It is! There we go. There we go. Moonfight. It's perfect.
Jesus Christ.
This really does sound like a CarboHydroM joint, you know?
It definitely has his signature all over it, and he was Max was acting as the go-between with him and the group and everything, which was just how they work, and I love it, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
And they did a pretty faithful arrangement. They didn't go off the beaten track too much, and it was nice to have something a little bit more straight in there. I mean, I love how everything turned out for everybody, but Moonfight was always going to be a little bit difficult because the original arrangement, the original mix is amazing from both. The track actually does show up in another Castlevania. It shows up in Dracula X Chronicles as well, and it's one of my favorite tracks, like favorite Castlevania tracks, and I was really happy that they didn't really go too off board with it, but it still sounds amazing.
Oh yeah, that's Carbo for you. That's what he does. And Wildcat. I don't know.
And they're lovely for it.
Yes, the Prime Legion is great, and so I was really happy to see.
Gens.
I was really happy to see them involved in this too. So I was like, oh yes, Prime Legion. I know this one's gonna be good. But it turns out they were all good. Who knew?
Yeah.
Just to mention, Max is going to be in Tiberian Sons playing at Super Magfest in January. So if anyone's there, be sure to see them for Max. And the rest of them.
I guess those,
but for Max,
mostly for
other assholes too.
I was wondering about Tiberian Sons recently. I was wondering what happened to him.
Well,
those Magfest, sometimes the Magfest collab bands go quiet for a little while and then they just come back. And I like that.
Hey, that is not dead which eternal lies, Kyle.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh dear.
All right. Let's go ahead and get into some 6-2.
Oh yeah. We'll get elbow deep in some 6-2 here.
Oh yeah.
He was
I love 6-2.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
6-2 was beyond Thenikin, the other artist I had never worked with before, but obviously everybody knows 6-2 sounds.
I've worked with him many times. He is always
he's fantastic.
Excellent.
And
yes.
He he had not done. He had been in quite a stretch of not doing anything for a good long while.
He had some health stuff.
He had some health problems, which obviously take care of yourself before you start doing anything else.
Right.
And I just kind of approached him, and I'm like, we have some gaps, and I have this track, and I think you might be good for it. It's just a suggestion, and he took Etude, which is my favorite track of the X68000 soundtrack. It's a very eerie, very creepy, very dissonant track, which kind of, if you've played the game and you've played that particular level, starts as a dungeon and then goes into a mad laboratory and then goes into this like absolutely cursed painting gallery, and very leveled, and like Juan had some trouble getting back on the horse, as it were, in terms of getting into really arranging things, but he stuck with it. Bless him for it. Just sticking with it, not just getting frustrated, throwing his hands up and saying I can't do it. He stuck it out, and he did a great job with the track, and I'm so happy he came on the project, and this could have been one of his returns to the arrangement scene.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since I've heard some new 6-2, so I'm always happy to see him on something for sure. Yeah, and this is an excellent track. So let's go ahead and get into it. This is Etude for the Killer from 6-2 Sounds. Don't go away. This is NGI. That right there was some Ailshon goodness with Ya Goddamned Bathead. I like the name of that track.
And it is the legit name of that track.
Is
too.
it the name of that song in the on the
It is
soundtrack?
name of
Okay.
the
From the
official
OST.
from the OST. You Goddamned Bathead. It was like it's the best name of a track, honestly.
Okay.
And of course, it's the Dracula boss fight music.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it was like, oh, okay, and it's super. I love it. It's super high powered for a Dracula boss fight. So, it's Ailshon did a good job with it. Took some. I know that Andreas had to fiddle with the mix a bit, just to kind of get some of the energy in there. But the end result, I was super happy with. It's a good track overall. It really does do justice to it.
Well, it's Ailshon. I mean, that's kind of how he rolls, being legendary and all. Before that, we had Snappleman and Prince of Darkness and Finbeard coming together for the theme of Simon, originally from Super Castlevania 4. More Snappleman.
Yeah. This so Super Castlevania 4 came out in 1991, and X68000 came out in 1993. So it was a pretty, quick turnaround for having a newer Castlevania track, rehashed. And it's a slightly different take on the track. Nowhere near the rehaul or overhaul that Theme of Simon had in like Castlevania Bloodlines, for example. But
Oh yeah, sure.
yeah, the trio of Snappleman and Pud and Finbeard, they really did a fantastic job on that particular track, just making it very epic sounding and very triumphant, like it should, like it honestly, Theme of Simon.
Yeah.
It should sound like that.
Of course. And of course, leave it to Snappleman to drag Pud into anything he's working on, which is always...
Well, originally it was
always a
going to be
treat.
Tony's track
is it?
overall, but Tony got busy.
Okay.
And Snapple kind of stepped in and took the reins and, did a lot of the arranging and whatnot, and got, Tony just ended up doing the bass, and he got Chuck to do the drums and everything. So it became, more of all three of them than just, primarily Tony's track.
Right.
Which, hey, however that works, the end result speaks for itself.
Exactly. Yep. Always like getting Tony on board for stuff.
Fucking Tony.
Yeah.
Who is this guy?
I don't know. It's some guy named Tony Dickinson. I don't know. Do you know him?
T-Dick.
Yeah.
No, I haven't heard of him.
He's a bassist. He's like a bassist for some stupid Christmas band or something.
I'm sorry. I don't learn the names of bassists.
I don't.
Kyle,
Yeah. I know. I don't care about Christmas either. So.
That's the one takeaway from the show, Kyle. It's Christmas.
It's true. It's true.
We love you, Dan, though. We do. Dan, I know you're in the chat.
Wait, who? I'm sorry. I don't learn the name.
Who is Snappleman? That's a dumb name.
8 Limes?
That's a dumb name.
08 Limes Taylor.
That's a dumb name. Snappleman? What's up with that? Man. So we were talking off air a bit, you and I, Eric. You were surprised that I had not gotten into Castlevania earlier.
Yeah, I think, it only took this radio show, an hour plus, and finally we're getting into talking about we should have been. So you were saying you started Mega Man with Mega Man.
Yeah, Mega Man 7, correct. Yes.
Okay, good. We have a full Mega Man album, actually. This previous thing was just the preamble to that. So we can jump into that now, Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to go into the Mega Man 7 album here shortly. But first, first up. no, there's
Anyway, so yeah, you
no
didn't
Mega
play
Man 7 album.
Mega Man until 7, and you were saying that Castlevania Circle of the Moon was one of the first ones. Castlevania.
Yeah, I didn't get introduced to Castlevania really until I discovered the video game music remixing scene. I was aware.
There's a scene?
I know, it's weird. There's a whole bunch of people who do video game remixes. It's this craziest thing. But yeah, I was not introduced to it until then, really. I had obviously seen it on store shelves when renting games and stuff, but I don't know, I was never into scary games or horror games or things that I like. Growing up as a kid, I liked, Sonic and Mario and kind of games of that ilk. It was more cutesy stuff at the time, I suppose.
Okay, so you're aware of Castlevania, it just never ended up in your console.
No, yeah, right. It never ended up on my radar in terms of actually getting the chance to play it. Mega Man I came across because I had friends who had Mega Man. Okay. So they owned Mega Man X and Mega Man 7, so that was my introduction to the Mega Man series. Otherwise, I probably never would have even picked up Mega Man. I would have never even rented Mega Man or anything if I hadn't played those. Final Fantasy was also the same way for me, but I never had any friends who were into Castlevania, which is stupid. Who are my friends? My friends are the worst.
Just calling them all out, right?
Yeah.
Lame. I knew.
All the friends I grew up with, none of them had Castlevania games? What the heck is wrong with them?
So much.
Well, to be fair, the only Castlevanias I had growing up were Castlevania Bloodlines, because the Sega Genesis was the only console I had. I had a Sega Genesis, I had a Commodore Amiga, and then just the NES Castlevanias, mainly the first one, which I would play at my cousin's because they had an NES. And, being a girl growing up, you didn't have many girlfriends who had gaming consoles, really. You had to pal around with the guys and hope, either them or one of my brother's friends would invite me over for some god-awful reason so I could play their consoles. And,
the early 90s.
Oh, Jesus. But I didn't get into a lot of the older Castlevanias until, I was old enough to buy used consoles. So things like Super Castlevania 4 and Dracula X. God damn that game. And the Game Boy Castlevanias and even Symphony of the Night. I didn't get to play those until I was in my late teens. So,
right.
But from there it was, just an absolute love addiction and obsession that obviously has lasted the whole rest of my life. So, produces albums like this. So there you go. It's all about, doesn't necessarily matter when or how young you got into the series. Matters is what you're doing with it now.
Right. Yep. And
I slice of philosophy for you.
Yeah. And I freaking love Castlevania now, so I am fully on board. I definitely enjoy it. It's still hard as balls, though, and I'm still terrible at it because I'm terrible at hard games. But it's fine. I'm okay with that. I can still love it and be terrible at it, right? Is that allowed?
That is allowed.
Okay, good.
No, I'm gonna veto that, right?
Okay, good. Okay, fine. That's okay. That's so much of the problem with modern gaming, or with the gatekeeping of modern gaming, I guess, where people are like, "Oh, you suck at that game, then you can't like it," or dude, you can't. How can you like that game? You suck at. I hate that.
So I suck at X68000. Not just gonna throw that one out there. I suck at it.
I think almost everyone does.
Yeah, and there you go. I mean, it is once you get to a certain point, it is a brutal game. I had to use save states on an emulator to actually to get anywhere with that game, and it was just like I have no problem saying I absolutely am worthless at that game, and I'm, there's a good handful of, Castlevanias. I'm not that good at Super Castlevania 4 either, even though it's a game its soundtrack is my favorite out of the series, and it's like one of my top Castlevania games of all time, but I still suck at it, so it's like, And I still know every fucking thing about it, but,
Hey,
whatever.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah, what's up?
Can I relate an anecdote for you and for our listeners here, please?
Sure.
So, Brenna and Ryan, Mega Beardo, and I were playing through X68000 using save states to beat it shortly before we started the album, or right around the time. And the curse of save states is we locked in right before the fight with death with something disgusting like 32 seconds on the clock or something. And watched Ryan try for about half an hour to beat death with that because we didn't want to go back to the previous save state and have to fight through the level again. And he just kept throwing himself at it, and there just was not nearly enough time to get from where we were to the fight and deal with, and it was
an impossibility. Pretty much, he had set himself up for failure on that one.
Yeah, it was to the point where I watched it for a good 15 or 20 minutes, finally got up, went downstairs, hung out for a while, made a drink, went back upstairs, and he's still just tossing himself against the brick wall of trying to get this done.
He eventually redid the stage, didn't he?
Yeah, we had to redo the stage.
Yeah, at that point, it probably was just faster to redo the whole thing rather than just keep trying to throw yourself
It was Ryan's sheer Determinator mode that he hadn't completely gone into. That was just I felt a little bad. I'm like, I did this. I am the one that is going to drive Ryan to absolutely murderous rage here.
It was an inspiring and terrible moment.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, that I get that so often too. That just Determinator mode where I'm trying to do something where it's obvious that it would be easier just to start over, but it's like, no, I can do it this way. I can do it. I can do this.
Yep.
Leave me alone. I can do this. And then it's like, fine. Fine, you stupid game.
Fine.
You win.
Fuck you. You beat me. Are you happy now?
you win.
Game.
You win, you asshole game.
Yeah.
This time. Restart.
Exactly. Oh, man. All right. Well, we are officially at the end of the show. But we do have 2 tracks left to close us out.
Oh, and we're coming up on my favorite one at the end.
Oh, which one is that? The one after the last track?
Yeah, I'd remember his name, but he's a bassist, and so I can't.
Okay, so the one after the last track is Pure Silence. So unless you put the album on loop, then it's just Snappleman again.
The silence you hear as you're drifting asleep, that's Snappleman.
That's Snappleman.
No, the Yes Mayhem track at the very end, the one Dan Taylor helmed, is a special treat in an album of special treats, and so everyone, that's my favorite because it's so quirky and awesome.
Yeah. Let's talk about Norgs first, though. Mother Earth.
Mother Earth was, and this was another instance of, this was a track that I knew was destined to be George's.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it was one of the tracks that I wasn't necessarily as familiar with, even though I knew the whole, but I refamiliarized myself and I'm like, this is George. This is George 100%. And I think I even went to Andreas and he's like, oh yeah, that's a George track. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, George, he at the same time he was making his track, he's also prepping for this show with Vince DiCola in California. And it kind of channels a bit of Vince in this track. I like to think it's got a bit of that Vince DiCola flair to it, and I was super happy that he included that. It was just like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah,
it really it really is, just pure George. And I was really happy he eventually got it to me. There was a bit of there was a bit of a like, oh yeah, I'm almost done. It's like, George, it's due tomorrow, dude. Come on, you're killing me, Smalls. No, he's. I love George to death. He's
and he did a great job.
He did a fantastic job with it, and I am so happy he did what he did with it, and Snapple worked his magic on the mix of it too. So, got both of those lovely boys in on it.
Mm-hmm. Norg is one of those guys worth waiting for on an album of people worth waiting for.
Yeah, that is very true.
It really is. And closing us out will be Yes Mayhem, the band of chunkstyle, Stemage, James Moats, and Kevin Lawrence. And I really do
hear that one.
I do love this track too. I love the original track too. When I started up the game, in the emulator, and it started playing the load BGM, and I'm like, this is freaking great. I don't care that the game takes 15 minutes to load. I'm gonna listen to this thing for 15 minutes.
Exactly. And what Dan did on it was just. It was the perfect ender. I mean, I could not have asked for a more perfect ender for the album.
Yeah,
he just. Oh,
I think it
speaks for itself.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, wasn't this one where you're like, oh, I need Dan Taylor to do this.
This was one that once he said, oh, I think I'm going to do load BGM. I'm like, yes.
Chunkstyle says the word you're looking for is goofy, and yeah, it definitely is. Oh, I do like all the little references to other Castlevania
it's delightful
songs.
is what it is.
It's really...
It's not goofy, it is delightful.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I will agree with you on that one. I love this one. It's the perfect closer.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. And always good to see Yes Mayhem again. That's a name we don't see nearly enough.
It took me years of hearing Dan talk about Yes Mayhem to realize it was kind of a play on words for Yes Ma'am.
Yes, it is.
And that is my failing as a person, but I have it now. So Dan, I'm finally on the same page.
Yeah, it is a play on Yes Mayhem, and it's also what is it? Dang it. The word I'm looking for. A confirmation of shit's about to get real. Confirmation of mayhem.
Yes.
Yes. Mayhem.
Which we could all use in our lives.
We can all use a little mayhem. Just a little.
Yeah.
Maybe
if anyone wants to have some have a weird little offshoot, go look up the definition of the crime mayhem as the California Penal Code describes it. It's not what you'd think.
Really? I did not even know that was a crime. Mayhem is a crime?
I'm just going to leave that there. You guys can look into it, but trust me on this. It's worth Mayhem.
That's a good album name. Mayhem is a crime.
I think Mayhem is also the name of a shitty racist metal band out of Florida, if I'm remembering.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Everything you love is destroyed.
Of course. All good words must come to an end.
Penal Code Section 203, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay. I'd have to look that up. That's interesting. Okay, well, we're at the end, so those two tracks will be closing us out. I'd like to thank Erich and Brenna for joining me on this episode.
Well, thank you very much for having us and for just, showcasing this album. I'm super just excited that everything came together like it did with this album, and I'm super proud of everything everybody put into it, and just help me realize that, make this a realization, make it a real thing, and spread the word of a more obscure soundtrack, especially now that it's Castlevania's gaining a bit more steam, with season 2 of the Netflix coming out next Friday, and then Requiem, Round Direction, Castlevania Round Direction there coming out, and there's, I guess, talk of possibly a Switch Castlevania game coming out. There's a rumor flying around, so there's a fair amount of uptick in the series that we haven't had in a while, and being able to make this album, make it a reality, and release same time as all these other great things. It really makes, me as big a Castlevania fan as I am, it warms my heart. It just like
It's cool to public eye when you've been quietly championing it for years,
pretty much that. Yeah, you've been the silent fan, and it's like, oh hey, it wasn't for nothing. And contributing to it, honestly, is what this was. Not just being just a fan, but actually helping contribute something to the fandom, to the community, and to the series itself. And I think this, hopefully, in the swirl of other Castlevania stuff been coming out, I hope this album can be another kind of jewel for Castlevania fans to kind of enjoy and learn about and have a good time with. So obviously, thank you to everybody who has bought the album. Thank you to everybody who's been listening to this this listening party, and everybody who, obviously, all the artists, and Erich, he was a lot of my he was the guy I was bound of ideas off of, a lot of my second guessing myself on, and he was a big part of helping me out, keeping me sane, and Andreas, obviously, the mastering and being just the enthusiast for the X68000 soundtrack that I was. And
who would have thought that after 67,900 Castlevanias they'd still be making good music for the 68,000th one?
Who would have thought they'd still be making that many Castlevanias?
I know, it's a dedicated team.
I know, 68,000 Castlevania games? Jesus.
It's true.
What the heck? Man, this is the longest running series in existence.
I think there's more Dragon Ball episodes, but almost, yeah.
It's close. It's damn close to it. All right, so before we head out, you guys got any plugs you want to mention, or anything you've got coming up that you'd like to talk about for a little bit? Or
well, I dropped the Hyper Earl link for the Castellum Sanguis album in the chat. That is the link to not just the Bandcamp release of the album, but also my YouTube channel that I put the entire album on, and then Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Deezer, I think, too. That was weird to search the album and suddenly, hey, Deezer is actually still a thing, and it's actually coming up in the search. That was odd.
You're gonna get so much Deezer.
Oh man, too much Deezer going on.
I relish this. I relish the challenge.
Time
so
for
yeah,
Deezer.
if Bandcamp is not your thing, obviously there are tons of those other links. Please, if you like the album, even if you don't necessarily have to buy it, just pimp it out if you could. Just spread the word. I would greatly appreciate that, because I honestly do think it's worth it. I think it came together as fantastically as it could, and hopefully continues to spread by little eeks and webs across things. Does not it will not be, I don't think it will be my last Castlevania arrangement album. They're already kind of planning future albums.
There are 67,999 more games to pick from.
Oh yeah, well that is true.
Yeah,
that is true. I might have to combine a few.
Yeah, you've got a lot of work ahead of you to cover all those games.
Up to that challenge.
Absolutely.
Ish.
Awesome. Okay.
Hey Kyle, thank you for doing the show, by the way.
Yes, thank you, Kyle.
No problem. Of course, I would not love anything more than to do listening parties for every album ever. But unfortunately, time is a thing, so I can't quite do that. But I'm really glad.
Goddamn adult life.
I'm really glad to have the opportunity to highlight this one, because it's well worth everyone's time to go check out and pick up. It's only $5. Come on, guys. Or it's on Spotify. Just go listen to it there. Just put it on repeat on your server box forever and let all the artists get every % of 1 cent that they get from Spotify stream. I don't actually know how much you get for Spotify streaming these days.
Don't make it depressing, Kyle.
Okay. But hey, if enough people like throw up a Raspberry Pi and just stream the album over and over and over and over again, you might make $1.
Don't make it depressing, Kyle.
Or you just go spend the $5. Come on.
There you go. Just go spend the $5.
Just go put in the $5. Just do it. All right. That's going to do it for Castellum Sanguis, or Castellum Sanguis 68. I am KyleJCrb, and I've been joined by Brenna Wilkes, a.k.a. Syndra, and Erich Peabody, a.k.a. Viking Guitar. Thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And giving your input. And
thank you, everybody in the chat. It has been lovely spending the evening with you.
Yes, it's been a great time, guys. Hope you enjoyed this album. Definitely go check it out. Syndrovaniaprojects.bandcamp.com to pick it up on Bandcamp, or it's all over the internet now. So you got the hyper URL there, the hyper URL. Get your hyper URL on. And I'll see you next time on Nitro Game Injection. Oh, patreon.com/KNGI if you want to support the show, by the way. If you enjoyed what you heard, you want to support more of it, you want to hear more awesome listening parties and more stuff like this, be sure to go check that out. And of course, KNGI.org, where you can listen to the show, archived episodes of this show, and all sorts of other cool stuff if you're not there already. So be sure to go check that out. Anyway, this has been Nitro Game Injection number 328. I'm KyleJCrb, and I am out of here. See you guys later.
Castlevania 6, 8.